The emergency alarm screamed through the Galactic Council's monitoring station on Nexus Prime. Operator Zilth's 4 eyes widened as the distress signal filled his screens with desperate waves of data. His pale blue skin turned even paler as he read the transmission. "Commander Vex, you need to see this immediately," Zilth called out, his voice shaking. Commander Vex floated over to the station, her jellyfish-like body pulsing with worry. As one of the senior officers at the monitoring center, she had seen many distress calls, but this one made her tentacles curl with fear. The message came from the Kythera system, far out on the galaxy's edge. It was from the Volani, a peaceful species known for growing their technology instead of building it. Their bioships were living creatures that could travel between stars, and their cities were made from giant plants that cleaned the air and provided food. "Help us," the message said in broken galactic standard. "Raiders have trapped our colony ships. They are taking our people. We cannot fight. Please, anyone who receives this, help us. We are dying." The transmission included images that made Commander Vex's stomach turn. Dozens of Volani colony ships floated helplessly in space, surrounded by dark metal warships. These were hegemony raiders, the worst pirates in known space. They captured entire populations and sold them as slaves to the highest bidder. "How long until our nearest fleet can reach them?" Commander Vex asked. Zilth's fingers danced over his control panel. 3 weeks at maximum speed, Commander. But the raiders never stay in one place that long. They will be gone with all the prisoners in days. Commander Vex felt helpless. The Galactic Council had strict rules about military operations. Everything had to be approved by committee. Everything had to be discussed and debated. By the time they made a decision, the Volani would be scattered across 100 slave markets. "Send the distress call to all council members," she ordered. Maybe someone closer can respond. But she already knew the answer. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's military forces were spread thin. Most species preferred to stay close to home, protecting their own worlds rather than risking their lives for strangers. The signal bounced through space, reaching monitoring stations across the galaxy. Most receivers logged it and filed it away. Some felt sad for the Volani but did nothing. Others calculated the cost of a rescue mission and decided it was too expensive. But the signal traveled farther than anyone expected. It reached the outer rim of the galaxy, where a small blue planet orbited a yellow star. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Array picked up the transmission at exactly 1432. Greenwich Mean Time. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca. Torres was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when her computer began beeping. She had been monitoring space communications for 6 hours straight, and her eyes burned from staring at screens full of alien languages. "Another trade dispute between the Zephyrians and the Alteri," she muttered, expecting another boring diplomatic message. But when the translation program finished working on the signal, she nearly choked on her coffee. "Admiral Chen needs to see this right now," she said to her assistant. Admiral Sarah Chen was in her office aboard the space station Vigilance, reviewing reports about Earth's newest warship designs. As the head of Earth's Deep Space Defense Command, she spent most of her time preparing for threats that might never come. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, and most alien species still saw them as primitive newcomers. "Admiral, we've intercepted a distress call," Torres said as she burst into the office. "It's bad." Chen read the translation with growing anger. The Volani were known even on Earth as gentle people who had never hurt anyone. They traded medicines made from their biotechnology and beautiful art grown from living crystals. The idea of them being enslaved made her blood boil. "What's the Council's response?" she asked. "They're still debating it. Their nearest fleet is weeks away." Chen stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into space. She could see Earth in the distance, a blue marble that had given birth to a species that had fought and clawed its way up from caves to the stars. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended most civilizations. "Get me Admiral Okafor from the African Space Command and General Petrov from the Russian Deep Space Fleet," she ordered. "Also contact the Krithari War Captain Thane and the Vorthak Queen Engineer Zix. I want to know what ships they have available for immediate deployment." Torres looked confused. "Admiral, those are military assets from different commands. We don't have authority to coordinate a joint operation like that." Chen smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found prey. "We're not coordinating a joint operation, Lieutenant Commander. We're conducting a training exercise a very realistic training exercise in the Cathara system. Within 2 hours, Chen had assembled something that had never existed before in galactic history, a multi-species fleet of Deathworlders. The term Deathworlder was what other aliens called species that evolved on planets so dangerous that just living there was considered impossible by galactic standards. The human ships came first, 3 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and the assault carrier loaded with Marines. These vessels were built like Earth's creatures, tough, adaptable, and designed to keep fighting even when damaged. The Krathari contributed 2 of their war barges. These ships looked like flying fortresses covered in armor and weapons. The Krathari themselves were 7-foot-tall reptiles from a world of active volcanoes and poisonous air. Their idea of comfortable temperature could melt most alien species. The Vorthak sent a swarm of smaller ships that could link together into larger formations. The Vorthak were insect-like beings from a planet bathed in deadly radiation. They saw in spectrums of light that would blind other species and could survive in vacuum for short periods. The Gainan, amphibious hunters from a world of endless storms and crushing depths, provided stealth ships that could hide in plain sight. Their vessels moved through space like sharks through water, silent and deadly. As the fleet gathered at the jump point, Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to all ships. On her screen, she saw the faces of her allies, reptilian, insectoid, and amphibian features that would terrify most galactic citizens. But she saw something else in their eyes, the same thing she felt in her own heart. "We're going to save those people," she said simply. "The galaxy thinks we're savages because we come from harsh worlds. Today we show them what savages do when innocent people cry for help." War Captain Thane's deep voice rumbled through the speakers. "The Krathari understand. We do not abandon the helpless." Queen Engineer Zix's translator rendered her clicking sounds into words. "The Vorthak swarm protects the hive. Today, all innocents are our hive." Admiral Chen gave the order and the fleet jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, Earth's monitoring station sent a message to the Galactic Council, informing them that several human and allied vessels were conducting training exercises in the Cathara system. The message was filed away and forgotten. No one thought it was important. They would learn better soon enough. The hyperspace tunnel stretched ahead of the Deathworlder fleet like a glowing river of stars. Inside the human flagship Vigilance, Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays showing her unusual collection of allies. She had commanded multinational human fleets before, but never anything like this. "Admiral, War Captain Thane is requesting permission to come aboard for a strategy meeting," reported Communications Officer Hayes. "Granted. Set up the main briefing room with environmental controls for all species." Within an hour, the briefing room had been transformed into something that could support life forms from 4 different death worlds. The temperature was set to a compromise that left humans sweating and Krathari shivering. The air mixture included extra nitrogen for the Vorthak and additional humidity for the Gainan. War Captain Thane entered first, his massive form barely fitting through the doorway. His red scales gleamed under the lights and his yellow eyes studied everything with the intensity of a born warrior. Behind him came Queen Engineer Zix, carried in a mobility suit that allowed her insect-like body to move in the ship's gravity. Her compound eyes reflected the room in thousands of tiny images. The Gainan representative, Scout Leader Kef, seemed to flow into the room rather than walk. His blue-green skin glistened with moisture, and his large eyes moved independently of each other, watching multiple angles at once. Admiral Chen activated the holographic display showing the Kythera system. "Here's what we know. 12 Vellani bioships are trapped in an asteroid field around the 4th planet. Sensor readings show at least 40 hegemony raider vessels of various sizes surrounding them." War Captain Thane leaned forward, studying the display. "The raiders prefer to overwhelm their targets with numbers. They sacrifice smaller ships to protect their command vessels and slave transporters." Queen Engineer Zix's translator crackled to life. "The Vorthak have encountered these parasites before. They use fear as a weapon. They want their victims to surrender without fighting." Scout Leader Kef's voice was like water flowing over rocks. "The Gainan remember the raider attack on our colony world Tidal Deep. They do not show mercy to those who cannot fight back." Chen nodded grimly. "The latest transmission from the Vellani was 8 hours ago. They reported that the raiders had begun processing operations. We all know what that means." The room fell silent. Processing was the raiders' term for sorting prisoners by their usefulness as slaves. The strong were kept for hard labor. The intelligent became technical slaves. The weak were often killed to save resources. "How long until we reach the system?" asked Thane. 16 hours at our current speed, Chen replied. "But we have a problem. Standard galactic military doctrine says we should call for reinforcements and establish a blockade to prevent the raiders from escaping." Kef's throat sacs puffed out in what Chen had learned was the Gainan equivalent of laughter. Standard galactic military doctrine assumes the enemy thinks like civilized beings. Exactly, Chen agreed. The raiders are used to fighting species that follow rules. They expect predictable tactics and honorable combat. They've probably never faced anyone like us. Queen Engineer Zix clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "What makes us different is our worlds taught us that survival matters more than honor. When death comes, you fight with everything you have." Thane's massive fist slammed onto the table. "The Krathari have a saying, the mountain does not care about the opinions of the small creatures that live on it. These raiders are small creatures." Chen smiled. It was the first time she had genuinely smiled since receiving the distress call. "Then we're agreed. We don't fight like civilized species. We fight like Deathworlders." She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on the raider formation. Standard tactics would have us engage their picket ships first, then fight through their defensive lines to reach the prisoner vessels. That would take hours and cost lives on both sides. "What do Deathworlders do instead?" asked Kef. "We go straight for the throat," Chen replied. "The Krathari war barges have the heaviest armor and shields. They'll punch through the center of the raider formation and keep the attention of their biggest ships. Meanwhile, human boarding pods and Gainan stealth ships will hit their command vessels directly." Thane's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "The Krathari understand this plan. We will be the hammer that breaks their formations." Chen continued. "The Vorthak ships are perfect for swarming tactics. Once we create chaos in their ranks, your vessels can exploit the confusion and target their critical systems." Queen Engineer Zix's compound eyes focused on the display. "The swarm will flow through their defenses like acid through metal. We will disable their engines and weapons while they are distracted." Scout Leader Kef studied the asteroid field surrounding the Villani ships. "The Gainan can use the asteroids for cover. Our ships can hide among the rocks until the perfect moment to strike." Chen felt a warm feeling in her chest that she recognized from her years in the military. It was the feeling of serving alongside warriors who understood what needed to be done. These beings came from worlds that would kill most galactic species within minutes. But they shared something important with humanity. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves. "There's something else," she said. "According to our intelligence files, the raiders have never faced serious resistance from their victims. Most galactic species surrender when the odds are against them. They calculate the losses and decide fighting isn't worth it." Thane made a sound that was half growl, half laughter. "They have never fought species that learned to survive when surrender meant death. On the Krathari homeworld, we fight volcanic eruptions that could destroy cities," Thane continued. "We learned that sometimes you must charge into the fire to save your people." Queen Engineer Zix's translator conveyed her rapid clicking. "The Vorthak homeworld has radiation storms that last for months. We learned to work together when individual survival is impossible." Kef's voice was quiet but firm. "The Gainan deepest trenches are filled with predators that hunt in packs. We learned that the strong must protect the weak or the whole pod dies." Chen nodded. "And humans learned to survive ice ages, plagues, and predators by never giving up. We kept fighting when everything seemed hopeless." She stood up and looked at each of her allies in turn. "The Galactic Council thinks we're primitive because we come from dangerous worlds. They think we're savage because we haven't forgotten how to fight. Today we show them that sometimes the galaxy needs savages." The meeting continued for another hour as they refined their battle plans. Each species contributed tactics that would have horrified civilized military commanders, but made perfect sense to survivors from Deathworlds. As the alien officers returned to their ships, Admiral Chen remained in the briefing room, staring at the tactical display. In a few hours, they would drop out of hyperspace and face an enemy that outnumbered them 2-1. But the raiders had made one critical mistake. They had attacked innocent people within reach of Deathworlders, and Deathworlders had spent millions of years learning one simple lesson. When someone threatens your family, you don't count the odds. You just fight. The fleet continued through hyperspace. carrying warriors from 4 worlds that had taught them survival was more important than safety, and protecting others was more important than protecting themselves. The raiders were about to learn what happened when you made the mistake of hurting innocent people in a galaxy that contained Deathworlders. The Deathworlder fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kythera system, and Admiral Chen felt her heart sink at what the sensors revealed. The situation was worse than their worst estimates. 43 raider vessels confirmed, reported Sensor Officer Kim. 12 Volani bioships are trapped in the asteroid field, but 3 of them show no life signs. They're dead, Admiral. Chen gripped the arms of her command chair. Each Volani bioship carried between 5 and 10,000 colonists. 30,000 people were already gone. The remaining bioships are sending distress signals, Kim continued. They're reporting that the raiders are transferring prisoners to slave transport vessels. On the main screen, Chen could see the raider formation. Their ships were spread out in a loose net around the asteroid field, where the Volani bioships hung like dying whales. The largest raider vessels stayed at the center, while smaller patrol ships moved in and out of the asteroids like feeding sharks. War Captain Thane's voice rumbled through the communication system from his war barge. The Krathari see their formation. They are confident. They do not expect resistance. Queen Engineer Zix added her analysis. The Vorthak count 17 different ship classes. The raiders have collected vessels from many conquests. This shows they have been successful for a long time. Scout Leader Kef's report was grim. The Gainan detect 3 large transport vessels already loaded with prisoners. They are preparing to jump to hyperspace. Chen made her decision. Every minute they waited meant more Volani would die or disappear into slavery forever. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Protocol Deathworld. Krathari vessels, begin your assault run. All other ships, wait for my signal. War Captain Thane's 2 war barges accelerated toward the raider formation like charging bulls. Their massive hulls were covered with armor thick enough to stop plasma cannons, and their shields glowed with power that could have lit a small city. The raider picket ships opened fire first, their energy beams splashing harmlessly against the Krathari shields. The war barges didn't even slow down. They crashed through the outer defensive line like it didn't exist, their own weapons tearing apart anything in their path. The Krathari are drawing attention as planned, Chen observed. Half the raider fleet is moving to engage them. On the tactical display, she watched as dozens of raider ships swarmed toward the war barges. It looked like the Krathari were about to be overwhelmed, but that was exactly what they wanted. Human assault teams launch boarding pods now, Chen ordered. From the human ships came something the galaxy had never seen before. Military boarding pods designed not just to deliver troops, but to punch through enemy hulls like bullets. Each pod was basically a missile with Marines inside, powered by engines that could accelerate them to incredible speeds. The pods streaked across space toward the largest raider command ships. The raiders were so busy trying to stop the Krathari assault that they didn't notice the small human projectiles until it was too late. Marine Colonel Rodriguez felt his teeth rattle as his pod slammed through the hull of a raider cruiser. The impact would have killed most galactic species, but humans had learned to survive forces that would crush civilized beings. Breach successful. Alpha Team is inside the command ship, he reported as his Marines poured out of the pod into a corridor full of surprised raiders. The raiders were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They were used to fighting species that surrendered when outnumbered. They had never faced human Marines who had trained to fight in the worst conditions imaginable. Rodriguez's team moved through the ship like a force of nature, their weapons designed for close combat in confined spaces. The raiders tried to organize resistance, but humans had learned warfare on a planet where everything tried to kill them. They adapted faster than their enemies could react. Gainan vessels, begin stealth operations, Chen ordered. Scout Leader Kef's ships seemed to vanish from sensors as they activated technology that bent light around their hulls. The Gainan had evolved as ambush predators in the deep oceans of their world, and their ships reflected that evolutionary history. The stealth ships slipped between the asteroids like ghosts, moving toward the transport vessels that held Volani prisoners. The raiders guarding the transports never saw them coming. Kef's ship materialized next to a slave transport and attached itself like a parasite. Gainan boarding teams flowed through the connection, their movements fluid and deadly. The raider guards found themselves fighting enemies who could move in 3 dimensions and strike from angles that should have been impossible. Vorthak swarms, execute dispersal pattern 7, Chen commanded. Queen Engineer Zix's ships had been flying in tight formation, looking like a single large vessel on radar sensors. Now they separated into dozens of smaller units, each one targeting a different radar ship. The Vorthak had evolved on a world where radiation storms forced them to work together or die. Their ships were designed to support each other, sharing power and weapons in ways that other species thought impossible. Raider Captain Vex watched his tactical display with growing horror as his perfect trap turned into a nightmare. His 43 ships had surrounded 12 helpless bioships, preparing for an easy harvest of slaves and biological technology. But these newcomers fought like nothing he had ever seen. The armored ships charged straight into his heaviest firepower and kept coming. Small pods had somehow delivered boarding parties directly onto his command vessels. Invisible ships were attacking his transports, and swarms of smaller craft were dismantling his fleet from the inside. "Who are these creatures?" he demanded of his sensor operator. "Unknown, Captain. Their technology is different from any galactic species in our databases." Vex had been a successful pirate for 20 years, by knowing when to fight and when to run. This felt like a time to run. "All ships prepare for emergency hyperspace jump," he ordered. But when his ships tried to engage their hyperspace drives, nothing happened. The swarming Vorthak vessels had targeted their jump engines first, trapping them in the system. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The raider formation was collapsing as individual ships found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't understand or predict. "Status report from all teams," she ordered. Colonel Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system. "Human boarding parties have secured 3 raider command ships. We're downloading their computer systems now." Scout Leader Kef reported. "Ganon teams have liberated 2 transport vessels. Approximately 15,000 Vellani prisoners are now safe." War Captain Thane sounded pleased. "Krethari war barges have destroyed 17 enemy vessels. The remaining ships are trying to flee." Queen Engineer Zix's translator conveyed excitement. "Vorthak swarms have disabled hyperspace capability on all remaining raider ships. They cannot escape." Chen stood up in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. But she could see something else in their faces: pride. They were saving innocent lives, and it felt good. "All ships continue operations. We don't stop until every Vellani prisoner is free, and every raider ship is destroyed or captured." The battle continued, but it was no longer really a battle. It was a rescue operation carried out by species that had learned the most important lesson their harsh worlds could teach. When innocent people are in danger, you don't count the cost. You just save them. The battle was turning into something that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. What had started as a desperate rescue mission was becoming the complete destruction of one of the most feared pirate fleets in known space. Admiral Chen watched her tactical display as the last organized raider resistance crumbled. 3 of their command ships were now under human control, their crews either dead or captured. The Ganon stealth teams had freed 4 transport vessels full of Vellani prisoners. The Krethari war barges continued their methodical destruction of enemy vessels, while Vorthak swarms disabled any ship that tried to escape. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the raider flagship," reported Communications Officer Hayes. "It's their commander. He wants to surrender." Chen's expression hardened. "Put him on screen." The image that appeared showed a tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms and cold black eyes. Captain Vex had the typical appearance of a hegemony raider. Augmented cybernetics, scarred flesh, and the arrogant bearing of someone used to being feared. "Unknown Commander, I am Captain Vex of the Hegemony Raiders. I formally request terms of surrender according to galactic warfare protocols." Chen looked at the alien who had been moments away from selling thousands of innocent people into slavery. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Deep Space Defense Command." "What makes you think we follow galactic warfare protocols?" Vex's confidence wavered. "All civilized species follow the conventions. Prisoners are treated humanely. Surrendering forces are allowed to withdraw with their personal vessels." "Let me explain something to you," Chen said, her voice cold as space. "We're not civilized species. We're Deathworlders, and Deathworlders don't show mercy to slavers." She cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. "Target the raider flagship. Disable their weapons and engines, but keep their life support running. I want them alive to stand trial." The human cruiser Determination launched a precision missile strike that tore through the flagship's weapon systems. The massive ship went dark, floating helplessly among the asteroids. War Captain Thane's voice rumbled through the communication system. "Admiral Chen, the Krithari have finished destroying the raider escort vessels. 23 enemy ships have been eliminated." Scout Leader Kef reported, "All transport vessels have been secured. The Guinan count 47,000 Villani prisoners freed from the slave ships." Queen Engineer Zix added, "The Vorthak swarms have disabled the remaining 15 raider vessels. None can escape or fight back." Chen nodded with satisfaction. In less than 4 hours, her Deathworlder fleet had accomplished something that galactic military experts would have said was impossible. They had defeated a superior enemy force and rescued nearly 50,000 prisoners with minimal losses. But the real work was just beginning. All ships begin rescue operations. Get medical teams to the Villani bioships immediately. The next several hours were a mixture of triumph and heartbreak. The Deathworlder medical teams worked alongside Villani healers to treat the survivors. Many of the rescued prisoners were in terrible condition, having been held in cramped slave ships for days without proper food or medical care. Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief medical officer of the Vigilance, found herself working in the living corridors of a Villani bioship. The organic technology was unlike anything human medicine had encountered, but the Villani healers quickly learned to trust the strange creatures who had saved them. "These Deathworlders are so gentle," whispered healer Silith, a Villani who looked like a tall, graceful plant person with bark-like skin and leaves for hair. "Their world must be terrible to produce such warriors, but their hearts are kind." Dr. Kim smiled as she treated a young Villani who had been traumatized by the raider attack. "We learned a long time ago that the strong must protect the weak. It's what separates us from monsters." Colonel Rodriguez was leading teams through the captured raider ships, documenting evidence of their crimes. What his Marines found in the ship's computer systems made even battle-hardened soldiers sick. "Admiral, you need to see this," he reported. "These weren't just random pirates. The hegemony raiders have been operating for decades. We found records of over 200 slave raids across 17 star systems." Chen reviewed the files with growing anger. The raiders had attacked peaceful colonies, research stations, and trading vessels. They had enslaved entire populations and sold them to buyers throughout the galaxy. Most galactic governments knew about them but did nothing because the cost of hunting them down was too high. "How many people?" she asked quietly. "Over 3 million souls sold into slavery," Rodriguez replied. "And those are just the ones they kept records of." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the innocent people who had suffered because civilized species had decided that saving them wasn't worth the risk. When she opened her eyes, they burned with determination. "Download everything. Every name, every location, every buyer. We're going to make sure this information reaches every government in the galaxy." While the humans documented the raiders' crimes, the other Deathworlder species were taking care of the survivors. The Krithari, despite their fearsome appearance, were surprisingly good at providing security for traumatized civilians. Their massive forms made the rescued Villani feel safe, and their deep voices were oddly comforting. The Vorthak used their technical skills to repair damaged Villani bioships. The organic technology was fascinating to them, and they worked alongside Villani engineers to restore the living vessels to health. The Guinan provided something equally important. They listened. Their culture valued the sharing of experiences, and they encouraged the survivors to talk about their ordeal. Many Villani found that speaking with the amphibious beings helped them process their trauma. As the rescue operations continued, word of the battle was spreading through galactic communication networks. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations had detected the massive energy signatures from the fight, and now they were receiving reports from the few raider ships that had managed to send distress calls before being destroyed. On Nexus Prime, Commander Vex received a priority transmission from her superiors. The jellyfish-like being read the message with growing amazement. "The Deathworlders did what?" she asked her assistant. According to multiple sources, a fleet of human and allied vessels completely destroyed the hegemony raider fleet in the Kithara system. They rescued approximately 50,000 Villani prisoners and captured or destroyed over 40 enemy ships. Commander Vex remembered the distress call that had started everything. She had filed it away, thinking it was hopeless. The civilized response would have been to send a negotiator to try to buy some of the prisoners back, or perhaps a single squadron to observe and report. But the Deathworlders had sent a fleet and fought a battle that most military experts would have called suicide. And they had won. "Get me a direct communication line to this Admiral Chen," she ordered. "The Council needs to speak with her immediately." Back in the Cathera system, Admiral Chen was reviewing casualty reports when the call came through. Her fleet had taken minimal damage, with only a few injuries and no deaths. The Raider fleet, by contrast, had been almost completely eliminated. "Admiral Chen," came the transmission from Nexus Prime. "This is Commander Vex of the Galactic Council Emergency Response Division. On behalf of the Council, I want to thank you for your actions in rescuing the Villani civilians." Chen looked at the alien commander on her screen. "We did what had to be done, Commander. The question is, what happens now? The Council is prepared to formally recognize your actions and provide you with a commendation for—" "I don't want a commendation," Chen interrupted. "I want to know what you're going to do about the other slave operations these raiders were supplying. We found evidence of over 200 attacks and 3 million enslaved beings." Commander Vex was quiet for a moment. "Such operations would require extensive resources and coordination between multiple governments. The political complications alone would take years to resolve." Chen's smile was not pleasant. "Then it's a good thing the galaxy has Deathworlders, isn't it?" 3 months after the Battle of Kithera, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in a briefing room aboard the space station Vigilance, reading reports that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Her desk was covered with diplomatic messages, military analysis reports, and requests for assistance from across the galaxy. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting another meeting about the Deathworlder Response Initiative," reported her aide, Lieutenant Commander Torres. "They want to discuss formal protocols for joint operations." Chen smiled. The Galactic Council had spent weeks trying to figure out how to handle what her fleet had accomplished. Their usual committees and diplomatic processes weren't designed to deal with species who acted first and asked permission later. "What's our current operational status?" she asked. Torres consulted her data pad. The joint Deathworlder fleet now includes 47 vessels from 6 different species. "We've completed rescue operations in 12 systems and eliminated 4 major pirate groups. Current intelligence indicates that slave trading in the Outer Rim has decreased by 60%. The transformation had been rapid and dramatic. Word of the Cathera rescue had spread through both official and unofficial channels. Other Deathworlder species had volunteered ships and crews for similar operations. More importantly, the galaxy's criminals had learned to fear the sight of Deathworlder fleet signatures on their sensors." War Captain Thane entered the briefing room, his massive reptilian form barely fitting through the doorway. Behind him came Queen Engineer Zix in her mobility suit and Scout Leader Kef, whose amphibious skin glistened under the station's lights. "The Crithari bring good news from the hegemony investigation," Thane rumbled. "The slave buyers we captured have provided information about 17 major operations. We can strike at them within the month." Queen Engineer Zix's translator crackled. "The Vorthak have completed analysis of captured Raider technology. Their ships were built from stolen parts and inferior components. No wonder they could not resist proper Deathworlder engineering." Scout Leader Kef's liquid voice added, "The Ganon Deep Space Scouts report that pirate activity has shifted toward the galactic core. They flee from the rim sectors where Deathworlder fleets patrol." Chen nodded with satisfaction. The criminal organizations that had operated freely for decades were discovering that the galaxy had changed. Species that prioritized survival over comfort and protecting others over protecting themselves were not bound by the same limitations that constrained civilized governments. "What about the Villani recovery efforts?" she asked. Torres smiled. "That might be our greatest success, Admiral. The Villani colonies have not only rebuilt but expanded. They're establishing new bioship fleets and have volunteered to provide medical support for our rescue operations. The rescued Villani had been profoundly grateful to their Deathworlder saviors. Instead of retreating to safe worlds, they had asked to help with future rescue missions. Their biomedical technology, combined with Deathworlder determination, created humanitarian capabilities that no galactic organization could match." A communication alert sounded, and the main screen activated to show Commander Vex from the Galactic Council. The jellyfish-like being looked tired but determined. "Admiral Chen, I have news from the Council chambers. After 3 months of debate, we have reached a decision regarding the Deathworlder Response Initiative. Chen leaned back in her chair. I'm listening, Commander. The Council has voted to officially recognize the Deathworlder fleet as an independent humanitarian organization. You will have the authority to respond to distress calls and conduct rescue operations without prior approval from individual governments. It was more than Chen had expected. The galactic governments were essentially admitting that their own systems couldn't handle the galaxy's worst problems, and giving Deathworlders permission to do what they were already doing. There are conditions, of course, Commander Vex continued. All operations must be purely humanitarian in nature. No territorial claims, no permanent occupation of systems, and full cooperation with local authorities after rescue operations are complete. War Captain Thane made a sound that might have been laughter. The Crithari do not want alien worlds. Our own mountains are sufficient. Queen Engineer Zix added, The Vorthak have no interest in ruling others. We prefer to build and create. Scout Leader Kef's throat sacs puffed with amusement. The Geenan swim in deep waters. We have no need for shallow territory. Chen looked at her alien allies and felt the same warm feeling she had experienced during their first battle together. These beings came from worlds that would kill most galactic species within minutes, but they shared the same values that made humans risk their lives for strangers. We accept the Council's recognition, she said, but understand this, we won't abandon innocent people just because saving them is politically inconvenient. Commander Vex nodded. We understand, Admiral. In fact, I have our first official request for assistance. The screen changed to show a star chart of the Meridian Cluster, a region known for its rich mining worlds and frequent conflicts. The Yorvac Mining Consortium has sent a distress call. 3 of their asteroid mining stations have gone dark. Long-range sensors detect unknown vessels in the system, and there are reports of workers being taken prisoner. Chen studied the tactical data. The pattern was familiar. Isolated targets, valuable resources, and innocent civilians caught in the middle. It was exactly the kind of situation that galactic authorities would spend months debating while people suffered. How long until we can reach the Meridian Cluster? She asked Torres. 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. Chen stood up and looked at each of her allies. It seems we have work to do. War Captain Thane's eyes gleamed with anticipation. The Crithari are ready for battle. Queen Engineer Zix's compound eyes focused with interest. The Vorthak swarms hunger for justice. Scout Leader Kef's voice carried the promise of deep ocean predators. The Geenan will not let the helpless drown. Admiral Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. Throughout the Deathworlder fleet, crews from 6 different species prepared for another rescue operation. They came from worlds of fire and ice, poison and radiation, crushing depths and burning skies. But they had learned the same lesson that their harsh environments taught. When someone needs help, you don't count the cost. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have received a distress call from the Meridian Cluster. Prepare for immediate hyperspace jump. Estimated travel time is 18 hours. She paused, looking out at the stars through the briefing room window. Somewhere out there, innocent people were in danger. Criminals thought they could operate freely because civilized species wouldn't risk their lives for strangers. They were about to learn better. Remember, people, she continued, we're not just representing our own species anymore. We're showing the galaxy what Deathworlders do when innocent lives are threatened. We don't ignore distress calls. We don't calculate the odds. We don't abandon people because saving them is hard. The fleet began moving toward the hyperspace jump point. Ships from Earth, the Crithari homeworld, the Vorthak cluster, the Geenan deep colonies, and 3 other Deathworlds that had joined their cause. Chen watched them go and smiled. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place full of species that preyed on the weak and innocent. But it was also home to worlds harsh enough to breed protectors who would travel across the stars to save strangers. The criminals and pirates were learning that the galaxy had changed. Distress calls were no longer ignored. A fleet of Deathworlders was listening, and they were coming to help. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Chen sent one final message to the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Chen reporting. The Deathworlder fleet is responding to a distress call in the Meridian Cluster. We'll send you a report when we're finished saving people. The message was logged and filed, but across the galaxy, other beings in desperate situations began to hope. Somewhere out there, warriors from the harshest worlds were listening for cries for help, and Deathworlders never ignored an SOS.